And I feel like a lot of people think of like healing and spirituality as like love and light and peace. That is just so not the case. Like your biggest spiritual awakenings will be quite painful because you're literally understanding and seeing yourself on such a deep level, and you're seeing every part of yourself that you don't like. You know what I mean? Parts of yourself that you have been carrying with you that feel so heavy and that you're ashamed by almost. You're literally seeing your shadow side, and you're spending a lot of time with your shadow side. What's good, you guys? Welcome back to the podcast. And I figured, since we're still in Mercury retrograde, what better way to start off this episode with the most Mercury retrograde shit I've ever heard of happening to none other than your girl. So we're going to get into it. So if you were here last week, I talked about how this past weekend I was going to a festival. I was going with Maya, and we were going to go to Outside Lands, or we did go to Outside Lands, and truly it really was such a magical, amazing weekend. Like Sabrina Carpenter, Victoria Monet, Kate, just icons, and like hearing their music live made me feel so many great things. But this is what really happened that fucked with me the first fucking day. So essentially the first day that we go, it's all fun and games and giggles and drinks and, you know, lots of laughs and fun. Tell me why the first day, which was Friday, we are on our way from one part of the festival to the other part of the festival. And while we walk there, it's kind of through the biggest crowd. Like, the venue is so large. It's at Golden Gate Park, so there's just so much space. But from one of the stages to the other one, it was like the most compact crowd going from one side to the other. So this was like a part of our walk or journey where we were like squeezing through people, you know? Come to find out, we get to our little area that we were trying to walk to, and I'm looking for my phone, you know, to pay for something. I got my phone jacked, you guys. Someone stole my phone. I am a victim of theft, of petty theft, of festival theft. You know, I hear this shit all the time that, you know, at festivals, obviously people's shit gets stolen. I just never thought it would be me. I don't know why I thought I was like above it. Like, I pride myself on the fact that I'm like so street smart. Like, nothing can happen to me. Like, I'm so street smart. And I am. I mean, I've been living in a city for like, you know, more than 10 years. Like, I know how to handle my own. I know how to not be fucked with in that way. But I guess I was too cocky. You know what I mean? And I know what happened in that crowd because like I've watched all those movies of like, you know, pickpocketers and how good they are and how they bump into you. So, you know, you focus on the place that they tapped you rather than what they're grabbing out of your bag or whatever. And I was wearing a fanny pack. So like it was here, you know what I mean? Just to know that someone reached in there and got it. Oh, it pisses me off so much. And of course that happened during Mercury retrograde. Of course, a piece of myself, you know what I mean? The most important piece of technology that we all have, of course it got stolen during Mercury retrograde. And it was just so unfortunate because the fuckers had a whole business plan, you know what I mean? And they were looking for a promotion because they were working overtime, all right? Because I wasn't the only one that got my shit stolen. When we went to the T-Mobile store the next day, we walk in there. There's 3 people in there already talking about how they got their phone stolen. Hilarious, sad. 2 more people walk in and their phone got stolen. At one point, all of us were just exchanging stories of like how dumb we feel. It was like group therapy, you know what I mean? Of all the people that got their shit stolen at the festival. We were all talking about how we're scared to like take our new phones to the festival. Like, you know, like getting your phone stolen once is rough, but imagine it happens back to back. Like that shit is not cheap. But it was just so funny because we were all also disgustingly hungover. You know what I mean? Like I feel like going to a 3-day festival, like, we still got it. Obviously, I wouldn't be putting myself in that situation if I couldn't do it, but it requires some rest, you know what I mean? And recuperation, and honestly, a lot of rotting. It requires a lot of rotting, because the best plan is to go day one, rot the first half of the day, the next day, and then get ready and go the second day. We didn't get a rot session on the second day. It was like up and at 'em. Like, as soon as we were awake, gotta go to the T-Mobile store, because, like, what if there's a line? And there was a line. There was a line. And then we kind of had to go to the other part of the city. We had to cross the Bay Bridge. And then, yeah, it was just like, and it was all fine, but it was just kind of all over the place. And it was literally Mercury retrograde. I blame her for all of this shit, But I will say, what I am proud of is that when I did lose it on Friday, I told Maya, I was like, I am not letting this, like, ruin the rest of our day. You know what I mean? Like, it's already done. They already got away with it. What am I going to do? I'm not going to sit here and mope. It's not going to give me my phone back. Like, I was sad, I was upset, but we literally had the best time at the next set, and we, like, danced our asses off and just had the best time. And I literally just, like, lived in the moment. You know what I mean? That night, like, I didn't have to worry about nothing. And that prompted me to, like, not post live the next day. Like, I took pictures and I would post it the day after for the most part. And that was nice, because, like, living in the moment is, like, the best thing you can do when you're having any sort of experience like that. More than anything, I love sharing what I'm doing with people, but I'm really teaching myself that, like, I can still take the picture and, like, post it way after the fact, so I can just, like, chill and, like, really enjoy what's happening in front of me, instead of feeling like I have to post it right away for people to see. So that was nice, and I learned how to do that, and I'm proud of myself for honestly not letting it ruin my whole entire mood, because younger Sara would have just, you know, been in a shit mood, and I would have just not lived in the moment, and I didn't do that, and I'm really happy about that. But it was truly a trip. I never thought that this would happen to me, and I felt so naked without my phone the next day. You know, it's wild that, like, this small piece of technology feels as intimate as, like, one of our own limbs. Like, why does it feel like you're naked when you lose your phone? Like, when was the last time you guys lost your phone? Comment down below. Like, literally let me know. How did you feel? It feels weird, right? Like, it feels literally like you lost your freaking big toe. It feels like you lost something that is supposed to be attached to you, which is, you know, toxic in its own way. But, like, how else will people get in touch with you? You know, it's just all a trip. But other than that, we rallied for 3 days straight. It was so much fun. Yeah, and I'm just happy to be back in my solitude mode, in my reading mode, you know? Like I said, I just need, like, sprinkles of, like, fun social activities, and then I can go back to, like, being an introvert and, like, being a hermit and just getting doses of social events. That's how I like to live life, because I still want to experience the other side. But as I've gotten older, I just really enjoy doing my own thing in my own place. It's just fun. I love hanging out by myself. I don't know about you guys, but I really do. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is political, but not in a way where I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, we're just going to get into politics. I just want to talk about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and their astrology signs, right? I mean, honestly, you would have to be living under a rock if you haven't been noticing how much they're killing it on social media. Like, Kamala, especially with her, like, you know, you guys know Charlie XCX has her Brat album, and, like, ever since Charlie XCX tweeted Kamala is so brat or some shit like that, it, like, took over. They're doing all these, like, coconut mixes, you know. You think you live under a coconut tree? Like, that shit mixed with, like, all, like, the Brat songs, and I don't know, I feel like we're in such a fun era now, ever since Joe dropped out, and I appreciate that he did that. But anyway, I was looking at Kamala and Tim Walz's zodiac signs, obviously, because I was seeing these videos where he's, like, out here, like, giving these speeches, and, like, Kamala is, like, behind him, and, like, she cracks up like when he hits his, like, you know what I mean, liners, his one-liners. She's just like trying to hide her smile, but she can't help herself. It's like a proud mom, you know what I mean? Like the Mean Girls mom, like, yes, you're killing it. And I just love to see it. So I looked it up, and Kamala is a Libra. And guess what? Tim Waltz is an Aries. Ugh! Two sister signs. I love when sister signs unite. Like, truly, I think it's one of my favorite things ever. I love it in synastry. I love it, obviously, in friendship. I love it in romantic situations. Like, I just like seeing sister signs come together because they're two sides of the same coin. If sister signs don't bump heads, the other side of that is such a beautiful, beautiful energy. And the synergy between two sister signs, when they understand each other and they give and take in equal amounts, magic happens. And I feel like they just balance the fuck out of each other and nothing can stop them. You know, if two sister signs decide that they want to work together, nothing can stop them as long as the communication between the two of them is good. And yeah, just in general, like when I think of Aries and Libra energy, like what are they good at? Like Aries is obviously good at coming through with that power, with the confidence, with the ability to confront anyone and anything and say what's really on their chest and, you know, not really need any backup. You know, they are able to get shit done and they have enough confidence to make everyone around them, make their whole team feel confident, right? And we have Libra on the other end of it, and Libra is so good at talking to people, is so good at socializing and understanding everyone's needs, you know? Like Libra is the balance scales. Libra rules over the law. And because of that, I feel like Kamala is just such a good person to use as an example because she's being very likable right now. You can say, you know, what you want. No one's freaking perfect, okay? But just looking at Kamala and how much she is using her influence and power, especially, she has a lot of influence over Gen Z right now because of that collab or because of the branding of, you know, the whole Brat Summer being attached to Kamala's campaign. It makes her relatable and it really makes her interesting, especially to all the Gen Z voters. I know I can say that too. Like Kamala is just literally killing it, and I feel like it probably has a lot to do with her Libra energy as well. Like Libras know how to say the right things. They also are really, really good at debates. So this is why I feel like this is going to be so interesting because both Libra and Aries are very good at debates. Now, they do things very differently, but they're tactful. Like Libra comes through with the information and they know exactly what to say, how to say it. They have that charm, and they know how to pick their battles, right? So when they come in for the kill, you really feel it. And then you have Aries, someone who does not back down. They have the power of Mars behind them. They back themselves up. They're really, really good at demanding answers from people. So that's why I feel like this is going to be interesting too, because Aries energy in general is someone that doesn't back down. So I feel like, again, another force to be reckoned with. And I'm just really interested to see how this is going to go. So we shall see. What do you guys think? Okay, so I saw this quote online and it really made me think, so I wanted to share it. It says, sometimes you have to decide this is the last time these people are going to make me feel this way and stand on it, whether it's family, a relationship, or a friendship. And that shit made me feel so many things. And there honestly is nothing more powerful than the last time you make that promise to yourself where you're like, you know what? I am done with this. Like, I can't do it anymore. And it's usually not the same time that you're like telling everyone else you're done. Because when I feel like at the beginning stages of like trying to sever ties with some situation, somebody, you feel the need, I don't want to call it performative, but it kind of is. Like you're telling everyone about it. You're like, I'm so done. Like I can't do this anymore, blah, 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 blah. Where I have noticed the time that you are actually done is the time where you make a promise with yourself and you're like, I can't do this anymore. Like I quite literally cannot go on allowing this to be in my life and allowing this to be my reality. Like, I'm tired. You know what I mean? At a certain point, it's not about just like the pain and you feeling stupid. It's about how tired you feel. Every time I actually cut someone off, or I deaded a situation, or I decided I wasn't going to reply to anyone ever again or whatever, it's because I reached a point where I was just like, I was tired and I felt bad for myself. I was like, why am I allowing this to happen when it's literally creating so much anxiety within my nervous system? Like, I am truly at my wit's end, and it's difficult. It's more difficult to try and make this work. Really, like really, 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 like for the most part, every relationship should be bringing some sort of joy in your life. And anytime I realized that something wasn't bringing me joy in my life, I was like, well, how can I make it better? And like, how can we work on this? And how can we do that? With the situations that were actually deaded, I was like, I don't even care about the joy that you once brought to my life. At this point, all you bring me is pain. All you bring me is anxiety. Like, I don't trust you. I don't feel safe around you. It's time to dead it, you know? So I think a lot of times we feel like when we tell everyone that we're done, that it'll make us like really stand on business. But no, if anything, when you tell everyone you're done and you realize you're not done, then you feel stupid. You feel like, oh, people are going to judge you. Like, make a promise to yourself first. You know what I mean? Like, tell yourself that you're done and hold that promise to yourself. It doesn't really matter what other people have to say about it. Like, it doesn't matter if you told your mom, your best friend, blah, 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 that you're done. Cool. The promise that really matters is the promise you have made to yourself. If you have told yourself that you are done with someone disrespecting you and someone not treating you the way that you deserve to be treated, hold that promise to yourself and keep it. It's the easiest way to start trusting yourself again, is when you tell yourself, I'm not going to allow anyone to hurt you like that anymore. And you literally cut those people out of your life. It's funny because I was actually thinking about like what signs are the most comfortable, like cutting people off. And obviously I came to the terms that it's Scorpio and Capricorn. And if you guys think any other sign like deserves that third spot, comment it down below. I want to know what you guys think too. And then when I was thinking about that, I realized like, oh shit, like the two cards that also represent like Scorpio and Capricorn in tarot are very controversial cards, which is the Death card and the Devil card. And it's crazy because both of those cards, if you're a newbie into tarot and you get one of those cards, you can't help but feel a little bit like scared or like, oh my God, the devil, death, like what you mean, what's going on here? And like, both of these things don't have to necessarily be bad. It just is what it is. Like, sometimes it's time to say goodbye, and sometimes it's time to see the ugly truth for what it is. Like, for Scorpio being the Death card, I feel like death can be saying bye to a toxic version of yourself that allows certain people or behaviors in your life. You know what I mean? It's all about spiritual transformation. Anytime you have a spiritual awakening, you quite literally are saying goodbye to outdated versions of yourself. That's why spiritual awakenings can be so triggering and like you're feeling raw. I don't know what experiences you guys have with spiritual awakenings. I have had two of them that were big ones in my life, and they were not fun. Nothing about that shit was fun. I feel like a lot of people think of like healing and spirituality as like love and light and peace. That is just so not the case. Like, your biggest spiritual awakenings will be quite painful because you're literally understanding and seeing yourself on such a deep level, and you're seeing every part of yourself that you don't like. You know what I mean? Parts of yourself that you have been carrying with you that feel so heavy and that you're ashamed by almost. You're literally seeing your shadow side, and you're spending a lot of time with your shadow side. I feel like in general, we all have light and darkness within us. I believe that about everyone. For some people, one is more prevalent than the other, but we still have it. All of us have it. And I feel like when you're going through a deep spiritual awakening, you are seeing your shadow side more frequently, and you're seeing it more clearly. And when that happens, you can't help but feel ashamed and scared and weird. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't help but feel raw. Like, oh my God, does everyone see me like this? And you know what I mean? Am I always just going to be this sad? And am I always just going to be so ashamed of my past? Or, you know what I mean? How I operate. That's what a lot of spiritual awakenings are about, is just really realizing that you aren't perfect. There are parts of you that are still attached to you that you're not proud of and are outdated, you know? And that's all about the death card. Like, if you receive the death card in tarot, like, it doesn't mean you're dying. You know what I mean? Or someone you know is dying. Also, tarot can't quite literally predict the future. There's always themes that you need to decipher when it comes to these cards. But when it comes to receiving the death card and it being associated with Scorpio, Scorpio is all about transformation, the death and rebirth of any aspect of your life. It could be your identity, it could be your relationships, it could be your job, it could be your relationship with boundaries. Like, there are so many things that we can break down just to rebuild up in a new way. And for that to happen, death needs to happen. Shit needs to shatter for you to make room for new things, right? So if there comes a point in your life where you feel stuck and you feel like you don't know what the purpose of it all is, that is probably a sure tell sign that you're going through a spiritual awakening. If you're at a crossroads and you simply cannot make any decision, like you feel stuck and it's literally painful to try and understand which way is the right way, you're probably going through a spiritual awakening, because your future self needs you to make a decision and your current self still doesn't know who you are yet. You know what I mean? Because you're still holding on to that past outdated version of yourself, and your future self is making your current self say goodbye to your past for you to evolve and become your future self, if that makes sense. And just thinking about Capricorn, you know, being associated with the devil card, it's kind of that same theme. Another card that people are typically, again, scared of receiving in a reading, but the devil card also represents, you know, your shadow side, the negative forces that constrict you from being the best version of yourself. And more specifically, it's all about being attached to the physical world and physical pleasures, things that can easily be taken from you, right? So like the devil, like there's this whole like, you know, story about how the devil has a way of persuading you, of making you give in to your temptations, right? So that's why it's associated with the devil card. And it's crazy because Capricorn energy is all about, you know, being at the top when it comes to everything, like getting everything you want in this life. Like, and they're an earth sign, so it's all about that, you know, that physical thing, wealth, power, all that stuff, right? If you don't have a good relationship with power, you will get lost in the process of whatever it is that you're going after to feel fulfilled in this physical world, right? So if it has nothing to do with spirituality, if it has to do with, it usually has to do with like money or wealth or power, you know what I mean? Things, again, that can be easily taken from you. Whereas if you're focusing on your spirituality, of your inner confidence, of your own, you know, mental stability, those things cannot be taken from you. See what I mean? Like, things that can be taken from you in this physical world are like, you know, money and people and, you know what I mean, things. Whereas any sort of like spiritual power or spiritual wealth or knowledge, even those things cannot be taken from you. You know? And all this to say, it really does remind me of one of my favorite quotes, which is never be a prisoner of your past. It was just a lesson, not a life sentence. I don't know who created that quote, but whoever did, you were onto something. And the first time I read that, I was mind blown because, yeah, like all we freaking do is, I mean, I can only speak on myself, is when you're too self-aware. You know what I mean? People that are too self-aware, all we do is sit there and psychoanalyze our past and our past mistakes and where we went wrong and why we allowed certain shit to happen and why did I do that when I could have done this? Like, you just sit there and like you really have no control over what happened in the past, but somehow we think if we just look at it from a different angle, from a new angle, we'll be able to heal ourselves. I don't even know if that's how I feel. I really wish I could ask my subconscious, why are you making me think about this situation again? Like, I thought we're over it. I thought we've healed from it. For some reason, at the most annoying times, I start thinking about shit that I did wrong or what I could have said. And it just sucks because you just can't help but blame yourself. You know what I mean? The older you get, you can't help but like judge the younger version of yourself, but you really were doing the best that you could do. And at the end of the day, you won't have the freedom or the time or the energy to create a better current situation for yourself or set yourself up for success for the future if all you're doing is thinking about the past and where you went wrong. That's why I always say guilt and shame are such useless emotions because they literally are not creating anything. You're just stuck in your head and you're blaming yourself. You're literally tearing away at your own self-confidence because you're analyzing and judging yourself for your past mistakes. Whereas at least when you feel anger, whatever, like you're at least, you can create something. You can put that towards something. Whereas when you're feeling, guilt and shame, you're just feeling sorry for yourself. And that I feel like is so low vibrational because it's also taking away your power away from you. And I don't love that for me. I don't love that for you. Just don't do it. Do as I say, not as I do. Don't judge yourself for your past mistakes. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is Chiron retrograde. I don't know if y'all know, but yeah, we've been in Chiron retrograde since July 26th, and we will be there till December 30th. And for anyone who doesn't really know all about like astrology or like, the transits, even with like Mercury retrograde, it happens every year, multiple times a year for Mercury retrograde. For Chiron retrograde, it happens every year. So like, don't ever get too scared of stuff like that because you've survived many of them before in your previous years of living. So it's nothing new. Of course it's new because it's, different planet, different sign, blah, 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 right? But at the end of the day, you've survived many before, so you will probably be okay. It's good to know what house it's happening and how it's affecting you and what area of your life it's affecting because that changes every year. But for the most part, I don't want to create any sort of fear or instill any sort of fear in people whenever I talk about like transits, like this big transit is happening because we're all living life and like I said, we don't have that much control anyway. So all you can do is just be prepared and learn about, different transits that are happening and how they're affecting you. So talking about Chiron retrograde, right? I saw this post by Sisters Village on Instagram. I'm going to post it right here. It talked about the time frame it's happening, like I said, July 26th to December 30th, and it's all about breaking cycles and patterns of self-sabotage, healing past and generational wounds, releasing your blocks, and cultivating self-compassion. And I thought this would be a nice time to do a Chiron retrograde check-in. For anyone that doesn't know, Chiron in astrology is known as the wounded healer. That's what it represents. This is the energy that hurt you the most in life. And through healing yourself, you have the superpower to teach others how to heal themselves. Depending on the sign and the house it's located in, you will see the themes of whatever this lesson or this pain point is. When you're healing whatever it is that you need to heal, it ultimately all does lead back to self-compassion because like I just talked about in the previous topic, if all you're doing is sitting there and judging yourself and being mean to yourself, you're not really understanding the lesson. You're still living in those feelings. And while the feelings were valid, you know what I mean? When you were going through, those feelings were so valid. Every time you think about it again, what happened, how you were hurt, instead of healing yourself, if all you're doing is just sitting in those feelings again, then they're just festering. You know what I mean? So that's why the self-compassion aspect of it is so important because you're allowing your past self to just be that, like someone that went through something, right? But now your current self has the ability to see the situation and see what you took away from it, to see what it taught you. What lesson did you learn in that situation that you otherwise wouldn't have learned if you didn't go through it? All the shitty shit we've gone through in our lives, I would hope they all have a purpose, and most of them do. And sometimes it's harder for certain situations to look at the fucking bright side. Like, I get it. Like, what do you mean I had to go through that to learn that? Like, why couldn't I have just learned it through a much easier and more pleasant way? That's just not how it goes. Some of us are stubborn. that's what I've come to realize, some of us being me. Some of us don't learn until something crazy happens and you're like, oh shit. Yeah, it needed to be that way because I have a high pain tolerance. And if it would have went any other way, I would have just been like, it's okay. I don't mind going through that again. Sometimes life just needs to hit you in the face so you could be like, oh my fucking God, that shit hurts so bad. Don't you ever do that again. And, the universe will let you know I won't do that again if you learned your lesson the first time. You're like, okay, got it. I learned. For example, my Chiron is in Virgo and it's located in my 9th house of travel and spirituality and higher education, right? That's all the themes of the 9th house, and Virgo's themes are all about, self-mastery and practicality, perfection, service provided. So when I learned that that's my Chiron placement, I was like, oh, okay. So when I first learned about that, I let it digest, and then I figured out, okay, I see where my pain point is. So if you guys didn't know, I've moved around in the world since I was 6. I only went to school in Iran, where I was born, for first grade. And then we immigrated to Turkey, and I was there for a year. Couldn't go to school there, obviously, because we were just immigrants there, and we were trying to come to America, and that was kind of like the middle ground between coming from Iran to America. So we were there for a year until all of our stuff got situated to come to America. So I wasn't going to school there. And then when we immigrated to America, I took this test and they put me in the 4th grade. So I essentially skipped 2nd and 3rd grade and I went to 4th grade in America. And I didn't speak English, right? Which was a lot. And honestly, my first few years of being in school were just so difficult. I have so much trauma related to education and learning and feeling like inadequate and like I'm behind on everything. And I realized that this was such a pain point for me. And I realized that I never really gave myself grace for it. Like, what can I do? Like, I couldn't control the fact that I couldn't go to 2nd or 3rd grade and that, we were immigrating. Like, there's nothing I could have done about that. But if you really think about it, those are such formative years. Those are such important years in your childhood. Those, like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, like elementary school in general, like you're building your confidence as a kid. And those are like the first few years of school where you're really making friends. And you know what I mean? You have all of these things that are going to be attached to your identity. And because I didn't have that stability, I feel like it really, really affected me growing up. And I didn't realize how much this hurt me until I got older and I realized how hard I am on myself when I don't learn things quickly. That probably has a lot to do with also my Leo Mars. Like, Leo Mars are known to have such fragile egos when it comes to learning things and not being good at them, from the beginning. We want to impress people from the beginning. And that tied with my Chiron in Virgo. I feel like I just have a hard time whenever I don't know something from the beginning. It feels like I'm like bare and naked and that I'm just not taken seriously. You know what I mean? So yeah, like when I was young, obviously I didn't speak English. I was behind in math because I feel like with math, you have to every year learn something new so that when you go to the year after, you know where everyone else is. I didn't experience that. I just went from 1st grade to 4th grade again. So that was difficult. But then as I got older, I started coming to my own and taking more advanced classes. Like, I started getting really good. Like, I was a really good student. But my whole life, even through college, I still had this fear of failure, and that I was behind on everything. Like, I just always had this fear that, like, something's going to happen where let's say my education will be taken from me, or, something like I'm going to fail out of like college. And I think we all have those fears. But for me, it was so intense because of those early stages, right? Of those beginning years. I thought if I failed, that means that I'm like dumb. I thought that if I failed that, it's because of how everything was set up at the beginning stages of my life, right? Like, I almost was waiting for the ball to drop at any given moment because those first years, at school, nothing was stable for me, right? So I just assumed that like stability doesn't exist when it comes to me learning things or me experiencing things. But yeah, then when I really tapped into my spiritual side and learned about, again, my Chiron placement, I started to understand the deep wound that I have that's related to my lack of education in those early years. I felt isolated. My Chiron and Virgo literally felt like the work I produced was never good enough, and I was desperately seeking for that validation. And we don't talk about enough how much Virgo does need that validation, right? Like they work so hard and they're such service oriented people, but what they truly need for that all that hard work is to feel that validation, for someone to tell them that they do a good job. And I think a lot of Virgos probably feel this way, where like it's almost expected of you to do such a good job because you're so perfect all the time. So no one really sees how much you consistently show up and how much you consistently do a good job. And that is such a hard thing to experience, I'm sure, as a Virgo. And I can relate with my Chiron placement being in Virgo, is that I feel like no matter what I did, it still wasn't good enough. And that's honestly the sad part of all of our Chiron placements. Like it all comes from our early years, and those are the times, childhood trauma is so hard to fix. Like you can't just like sit there and be like, I release that energy, and like you can't just like be like, oh, like that's not me anymore, and I forgive myself and I forgive the people that made me feel that way. Like it's so hard to erase those years or the pain that you experienced in those years from your mind to move forward in life. But I think the first step is like realizing where it comes from, who it comes from, why you feel this way. And I think the coolest part about your Chiron placement is that it shows you exactly where this pain point comes from. It's up for you to like decipher exactly how it relates to you, but just looking at the sign and looking at the house it falls into and the themes of that house, really think about how that has affected you. Did you experience something related to the themes of that house in your childhood? And did it relate to the sign that it's in as well? So I think that's such an interesting way to do some shadow work, to really understand where it is that you feel insecure. And once you tap into that, you can really also help other people heal that version of themselves and that part of themselves. Like it's crazy because look at me now. Like I'm literally communicating my thoughts and feelings online for thousands of people to hear and to judge. So I'd say I definitely healed parts of myself, and I'm continuing to do so, because if you told like Sara when she was in elementary school or even middle school, even high school, that I was going to be talking to people about my spirituality, about astrology, that I was just even going to have a platform online where I'm sharing my thoughts and communicating, I would be like, what? Like, you feel comfortable doing that? You feel comfortable speaking to people and sharing your ideas without feeling like they're judging you and judging the way you speak? It's crazy what you can do when you stop being your own biggest hater and the person that judges yourself the most, like truly. And I think it's so corny, but it's the truth. Like, people that have courage, they don't lack fear. They are fearful. They have fear, but they're still doing the things they want to do regardless of that fear. And that's, I feel like, the most important thing about shadow work and about spirituality, is that you know where your dark side comes from. You know the parts of yourself that you're still working on. But you know that you also deserve a beautiful life. You know that you also deserve to be happy. And you're working on yourself while still living the best version of your life. You know what I mean? That's why I don't believe in the whole, like, you have to be completely healed to be in a relationship. I do think there are certain parts of yourself that you need to heal to be in a healthy, stable relationship. But for the most part, I think it's important to know that we're all still work in progresses, and just because you're not perfect doesn't mean you don't deserve love, and you don't deserve friends, and you don't deserve a good family around you. I don't think any of that shit is true. Two people can be together and they're still learning about themselves while in a relationship. I think it's actually really sweet when you do share, your shortcomings with your partner and your friends. It's really, really hard to be honest with people about, what you lack and what you're working on and, your insecurities. But when you do that, maybe they'll give you grace and they'll see that this is something you struggle with, so you have a harder time expressing. You know what I mean? Like, they'll see that when you're acting out, like, oh, you told me that this is because these type of situations trigger you. Now I'm going to give you grace. Whereas if you're pretending you're perfect and you're healed, when you act out or when you show up in not your best way or most authentic way, the people around you will just judge you and be like, what's wrong with you? Like, I thought you were perfect. Like, I thought that you've already dealt with that. But yeah, that is my whole spiel on Chiron retrograde. If you may be in your head a lot when it comes to your past mistakes, points of insecurity, things that you are typically really hard on yourself for during these next few months that Chiron is in retrograde, you are not going crazy. The energy is quite literally making you look inward when it comes to your insecurities. And honestly, the best thing you can do for yourself is to just be compassionate. When it comes up, when these insecurities come up, understand that it's normal, that you're still dealing with the pain of, growing, with the pain of seeing yourself more vividly, seeing who you were and why it didn't work more vividly, and that is okay. Like, you weren't meant to be perfect from the beginning. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way you're born and you know everything that you should know by the time you're an adult and you're making your own decisions. You're going to make mistakes. That's life. And your environment and the people that were around you have a lot to do with it as well. So you can't just blame yourself. It's lessons to be learned, and the more compassion you have for yourself, the more you'll be able to look at it from a bird's eye view and understand the lesson and the takeaway that is needed in order for you to let go of this pain. Okay, now on to it's a serious topic, but not serious in the sense that no, it's a serious topic. You know what? It's a serious topic. Okay, I know this isn't new, but y'all heard about Armie Hammer and the cannibal allegations, right? I don't know if you're living under a rock, but yeah, Armie Hammer was exposed for allegedly being a cannibal, and all you have to do is literally go and Google it. There's texts that show very concerning behaviors from him, and words and sentences and just weird shit. One of the ones I saw was him asking this girl, literally saying I'm 100% a cannibal, I want to eat you, and that's scary to admit. It's crazy. It's crazy. Again, this is all alleged, but when multiple people come forward saying shit like this, it's bruh, multiple people from different parts of the world came together and came up with this idea that you're a cannibal. No, you're probably a cannibal, allegedly. And I just thought this was crazy because, I believe a month ago or something, he was on Piers Morgan getting interviewed. And I was just, kind of dying laughing at the interview because it was, the typical interview of, someone sitting down, interviewing someone and letting them know, this is what we've heard, these are the facts. And the person that is probably guilty of these things, their response is, no, it's a lie. Of course I'm not a cannibal. These people are, crazy. Of course it's not true. Of course I don't eat people. Literally, that's what it felt like. It felt like an SNL skit. And I just feel we needed more specifics. Why did you say these things? Why did you send these texts? What are you into? It just doesn't sit right with me. And then what had happened was, so I went on Google. And, as I like to do, I'm always interested in people's birth charts. So I Googled Armie Hammer's birth chart. And guess what? He is a Virgo with a Gemini moon. And you know what that means. You know what they say about Virgos with Gemini moons. That they're cannibal. No, I'm just kidding. They say that they're really good with their words, which is true, okay? I feel as we know, Virgos in general are really, really eloquent with what they say. They don't say anything. They're very picky with their choice of words. And they want to make sure that they're saying the right things. They're intentional, I would say, when they're speaking. And then that tied with a Gemini moon, someone that is very comfortable speaking and very comfortable with verbalizing their feelings. Not verbalizing as in releasing their feelings, because as we know, a lot of air moons are not good at feeling their feelings, but they're really good at talking about their feelings. And he has a Venus in Libra. I feel all of those things together can make someone very, very manipulative. And I just thought that was crazy Because I just imagine his Virgo sun ass is like sitting there getting interviewed, or like his biggest secret comes out, and that's a pretty big secret. To be a cannibal is, dare I say, the biggest secret ever. And this shit just came out. And I just imagine like what his Virgo ass is doing while he's sitting there. Like, thank God for his Gemini moon. You know what I mean? That can like kind of whip something out, whip out some bullshit. Because I know the Virgo in him is stressing. He is like, fuck. How did they find out? Maybe you should have been, honestly, why am I even giving advice to a cannibal? I'm glad you got caught. If you are a cannibal, allegedly. But yeah, this is all just so wild. And I feel like this story is not done yet. Like, I feel like more shit is going to come out about this. And I'm definitely going to be following this story because I'm deeply fascinated. And I don't know, you guys, it just feels like we're living in a simulation. Like, how do we have someone on the news getting interviewed about being a potential cannibal? And like, why isn't it everywhere? It's like we don't care anymore. It's like when we found out like aliens were real and they confirmed it and like nobody cared. Like, are we as a society okay? Because I feel like we are so numb. We are so numb that we don't even care anymore. As I'm saying I realize maybe I am too. Something new happens every other day that is so groundbreaking and insane that we don't even have time to process what happened like 2 days ago. And it's all just a lot. I feel like we're all just overly stimulated, but also numb at the same time. Does that make sense? Like, we're all so overly stimulated because we're taking in so much information via so many different sources and, you know, social media, TV, blah, blah, blah. But we're also so numb to it because it's been happening for so long. And it's crazy to think that, like, the internet, you know, and the age of social media, like, we have been in it for a good, let's say even with Facebook, a good, 15 years. And it's crazy because, like, no real studies have been done about the effects of social media and how often we're on the internet and how much information we're taking in. Like, you feel me? Like, I feel like studies that happen 50 years from now about how social media has affected us as a society, how the internet has affected us, those studies 50 years from now are going to be groundbreaking and so interesting to read about and understand. But right now, I feel like we are so in the thick of it that we don't really know. Like, we think we know, and we know it's bad for you, and you shouldn't know that much about what's happening around the world, blah, 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 blah. But I feel like until 50 or so years from now, we won't really know everything that we went through and how our brain was affected, you know, by all of this information. Because I feel like we are genuinely overstimulated and numb at the same time. And it's just a crazy, crazy time to be alive, you know? All right, you guys, so that is the end of this podcast. Thank you for kicking it with me. I hope you enjoyed all the topics. Don't forget to comment down below. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, go to the YouTube video and leave a comment. I want to know your thoughts. If you're watching, don't forget to subscribe, like the video. Let me know your thoughts on any of the topics we talked about, or also type in what topics you want to hear on next week's episode, because I'll definitely check that out as well. I love you guys so, so much. I hope you're having an amazing week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.